2020 marks the 200th anniversary of the first sighting of the lightly treed limestone plains by Europeans, probably from Black Mountain. For 25,000 years, the Ngunnawal people had used this river valley as a food source and as a travel route to the mountains. Then, a century ago, this area was selected for Australia's federal capital. Canberra, envisaged as a city beautiful, a city of trees, the bush capital. But by then, a century of intensive sheep grazing had reduced the city site to an almost treeless plain. An urgent priority was to reverse this landscape degradation by planting trees, particularly on the hills, to control erosion by both rain and wind. Trees would ameliorate the harsh climate and strong dusty winds that Canberra experienced at that time. These trees would also provide a backdrop of treed hills for the city beautiful sought by the new federal government. Charles Weston is remembered today as the industrious visionary who, as Superintendent Parks and Gardens, organised the planting of trees from Yarralumla Nursery in the city area. But his initial appointment in 1913 was as officer in charge of afforestation branch, with the important initial task in establishing Canberra's urban forest on the hills that fringe the city. He established tree nurseries and trialled trees and shrubs to establish which species would thrive in the area's harsh climate. We are standing on the western edge of the area that formed Walter Burley Griffin's city plan. On Griffin's original 1911 plan, the area here is shown as a forest and game reservation. The forest would complement a redwood forest on the eastern fringe of the new city. But by 1915, a continental arboretum was envisaged, with areas of trees from the different continents. By 1916, the plan had changed again. Afforestation of 3 bare hills in this area, known as the Green Hills, was proposed. The trees were part of a proposal to establish a cemetery on the 2 highest hills. Griffin's concept was for evergreen trees, and cypresses and cedars were selected. Dark columnar trees may have been chosen because they were traditionally a symbol of death and immortality. By 1917, the cemetery project had died, but the afforestation scheme was maintained. The 3 hills, when planted, would strengthen and terminate the skyline view along the access from boulevards running east-west from Capitol Hill, including Perth Avenue. The plantings would reinforce the name Green Hill and complement Charles Weston's recent plantings at nearby Mount Stromlo. Here, on the lowest of the 3 green hills, Roman Cypress Hill, more than 9,000 Cupressus sempervirens were eventually planted, many of them replacing initial plantings that failed because of drought. A native tree of North Africa, the seeds for these plantings were brought to Canberra by Charles Weston from the New South Wales Government Nursery in Campbelltown in May 1913. He wrote on the card recording this first deposit, "Among Cupressus, this holds pride of place as a drought resister. Every encouragement must be given to its extended planting in the Federal Capital Territory." Today, many examples survive in places across the city, including Hague Park and City Hill. Many of the trees planted here on Roman Cypress Hill a century ago survived until they were destroyed in bushfires that swept towards the city from the west in 2003. But seeds from the original plantings had been harvested in 1992, and from them hundreds of seedlings were raised in Yarralumla Nursery and planted on these slopes in 2005. The trees we see today are the progeny of the original trees planted a century ago. A few of the original trees at the top of the hill survived the fires. Others had disappeared earlier when Roman Cypress Hill was sliced to accommodate the Cupressus Parkway. Griffin's vision of a continental arboretum at the western extent of his city plan never eventuated, but following the 2003 bushfires, a new national arboretum was created in the Green Hills. This encompasses the higher two of the three hills. The most westerly of the Green Hills is marked as Green Hill on early maps, but since the 1980s it has been known as Dairy Farmers Hill. Here, Weston planted some 17,000 Atlas cedars, Cedrus atlantica, a native of the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. None of them survived here, but they have been successful as a park and street tree in the city area. Today, there is a scattering of later plantings of pinus varieties near the summit, but otherwise it provides a reminder of the bare green hills which Griffin and Weston sought to clothe in evergreen trees. The most extensive survivors of Weston's century-old Green Hills plantings are on the northernmost hill, today labelled as Himalayan Cedars by the National Arboretum. Here, Weston supervised the planting of nearly 30,000 Cedrus deodara. This species occurs naturally above 2,000 metres in the Himalayas, but grows very slowly locally. Let's take a closer look. Deodars have done better in Canberra as a street tree, reaching up to 20 metres with a crown spread of 25 metres. But here, after a century and growing in close proximity, they are far smaller. This is an important timber species in the Himalayas, but not suited as a production timber here. Himalayan Cedars is an extensive plantation and follows Griffin's insistence that planting should have irregular edges and not appear as a cap on top of each hill. Here at the Green Hills, there is currently no heritage protection for this important site. Roman Cypress Hill appears on the Register of the National Estate, a pre-1999 heritage list with no statutory effect. Strangely, the Himalayan Cedars area, the finest extant example of the Griffin Western afforestation at Green Hills, has no heritage recognition. The nearby Glenlock Cork Oaks, Yarralumla Nursery and Westbourne Woods, all of which have similar associations with Griffin and Weston, are all on the ACT Heritage Register. Recognition of the purpose and importance of the Green Hills plantings as a key component in the Griffin's Federal Capital Plan is long overdue.